Welcome to the Relationships Decoding Podcast.
You ever get that feeling like you're hitting a brick wall?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're trying to have a conversation with someone, and maybe you're talking about something in the news, or, you're just trying to share a different perspective on things, and you lay out all your reasons, and it seems so logical.
Right.
And in your head, you're like, okay, they totally get it now.
Yeah.
But then they just dig in even more.
Totally.
Like they double down on what they already believed.
Happens all the time.
Like the more you try to reason with them, the more stubborn they become.
It's so frustrating.
I know. I've definitely been there, especially at family gatherings or, scrolling through those comment sections online.
Oh, yeah. Those comment sections are a breeding ground for that kind of thing.
It can be really frustrating.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It is. You're putting in all this effort, to share what you think is good information.
Right.
Hoping to connect with people. But then it's like the opposite happens.
Yeah, it's like there's a name for that opposite.
There is.
It's like this weird thing where instead of changing someone's mind, when you show them evidence that contradicts what they think,
Right.
it doesn't change their mind at all.
Yeah.
It actually makes them believe it even more strongly.
Exactly. It's almost like you're pushing them further away from what you're trying to get them to see.
It's wild.
Yeah,
So in this deep dive, we're going to really explore this for you.
we are.
It's called the Backfire effect.
That's it.
And we're going to look at what this effect is all about,
Yeah.
why it happens,
Uh-huh.
and most importantly, what you can do about it
Right.
instead of, banging your head against the wall.
Exactly. Because sometimes it feels like that.
Yeah. You're just like, why am I even trying?
Yeah. But we're going to try to give you some more tools and techniques to deal with this.
Exactly. Because we've been looking into all kinds of research on why our brains, sometimes react this way.
Uh-huh.
And we found some really interesting strategies
Oh, yeah.
for how to deal with it.
Absolutely.
So let's get right into it. What exactly are we talking about when we say the backfire effect?
So the backfire effect is this kind of unexpected reaction where instead of someone kind of revising their beliefs when they're faced with new information that contradicts their beliefs,
Right.
they actually double down and believe it more.
Yeah.
It's as if that opposing information is somehow confirming what they already thought.
Wow. So it's not just that they're being stubborn
No.
or, unwilling to listen.
Right.
There's something else happening in their brains.
Yeah, there's something deeper going on there. It's a cognitive bias. And studies have shown that this happens a lot when people's beliefs are really tied to their identity.
Okay.
Like, their political views or their strong ideologies.
So we're not talking about,
Yeah.
whether pineapple belongs on pizza.
Right, exactly. This is not about pizza toppings.
This is about the stuff that really gets people fired up.
Yes, exactly. The stuff that people are really passionate about.
Yeah. Okay. So we're talking about beliefs that are connected to someone's values.
Yeah. And their worldview.
Okay. So we're starting to understand what it is.
Yeah.
But why does it happen? Why does our brain do this weird thing where instead of being like, oh, interesting new information, let me consider that. It's like, no, I'm right.
Yeah.
You're wrong.
Well, and, we like to think that we're logical beings.
Right.
But really, our brains are also kind of wired to protect the beliefs that we already have.
Yeah.
So when new information comes in that really clashes with our existing beliefs, it can create something called cognitive dissonance,
Okay.
which is like this really uncomfortable feeling of having two conflicting ideas in your head at the same time.
It's like that feeling of, oh, I don't like this.
Yeah, it doesn't feel
It
good.
doesn't feel right.
Yeah, and so our brains will do a lot of work to try to get rid of that discomfort. And one of the ways we do that is by dismissing or rationalizing away the new information rather than actually changing our existing beliefs.
So it's like our brain is like, wait a minute. This new information,
Yeah.
it doesn't fit with what I already know.
Right.
It doesn't fit with what I'm comfortable with, so I'm just going to ignore it.
Exactly.
I can explain it away.
Exactly. Think about someone who's always supported a particular political party.
Okay.
If they encounter some negative information about that party,
Uh-huh.
their motivated reasoning might kick in.
Okay.
And they might start focusing on is this source biased?
Right.
Or they might downplay the importance of the negative information
Yeah.
just so that they can maintain their existing beliefs about that political party.
So they can stay comfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So that's one reason why we do this.
Right.
What else is going on?
Well, there's another really important factor, and it's called biased assimilation. And this is Basically, our tendency to be very accepting of information that confirms our existing beliefs, but to be super critical of information that challenges them.
So I'm only reading the articles that agree with me.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
We tend to, seek out and give more weight to sources that support our views, and we really scrutinize anything that contradicts them.
Okay, so it's like if you think a certain diet is the healthiest,
Uh-huh.
you're going to read all the articles that say that diet is amazing.
Yeah.
And you're going to find flaws with any study that says maybe it's not so good.
Exactly. You're looking for things to confirm what you already think.
Got it. Okay, so we're not just passively taking in information.
Right.
We're actually filtering it
Yeah.
to reinforce our existing beliefs.
We're constantly looking for things that will support what we already think.
Okay, what else is going on here?
Well, we also have this thing called psychological reactance.
Okay.
And this is basically the pushback we feel when we feel like our freedom to think or choose is being threatened. So even if the belief that's being challenged isn't necessarily in our best interest, the fact that someone is trying to change our mind can trigger resistance.
It's like that thing where someone tells you not to do something and then suddenly you want to do it even more.
Exactly. Yeah, like you want to prove that you're in control.
Yeah, okay, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody likes to be told what to think.
Nobody.
So if you come at me too strong,
Right.
I'm going to push back.
Yeah, you're going to put your guard up.
Okay. And then there's this other thing you mentioned called the illusory truth effect.
Yes.
That sounds kind of scary.
It can be a little bit unsettling. So this is the idea that simply repeating false information over and over again can make people start to believe it.
Really?
Yeah. Even if a claim has been completely debunked, if people keep hearing it repeated enough, it starts to feel familiar.
Okay.
And that familiarity can lead to them thinking that it's credible.
So it's like, even if I've seen evidence that disproves something,
Right.
if I keep seeing it pop up on social media or wherever, I might start to think, well, maybe there's something to it.
Exactly. Just because you've seen it so many times.
Just because I keep seeing it.
It's the power of repetition.
That's really interesting and also kind of scary.
Yeah, it can be.
So knowing all this, knowing that our brains are working against us in these situations, what can we do about it?
Right. Well, the good news is that there are some things we can do.
Okay, good.
So instead of trying to argue with someone and present them with all these facts and figures, which often doesn't work,
Right.
there are some other approaches that might be more effective.
I like the sound of that. What are they?
Well, one of the most important things is to shift from a stance of argumentation to a stance of inquiry.
Okay.
So instead of saying, you're wrong about this, try asking open-ended questions.
Like what?
Like, what makes you think that? Or
Okay.
could you tell me more about how you came to that conclusion?
So I'm not telling them they're wrong. I'm just trying to understand their perspective.
Exactly. And this can be really powerful because it encourages the other person to actually examine their own beliefs.
Okay.
And sometimes in the process of explaining their reasoning, they might actually identify inconsistencies or gaps in their logic that they hadn't even noticed before.
So it takes the pressure off a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. It's less confrontational and it shows them that you're genuinely interested in their point of view.
Okay, I like that. What else?
Well, another really important thing is to offer choices instead of giving commands.
Okay.
So instead of saying, you should do this, try saying, have you considered doing this or that?
Okay.
This gives them a sense of autonomy.
Right.
And it makes them less likely to feel defensive.
So it's not me telling them what to do. It's me giving them options.
Right. And people are much more receptive to information when they feel like they're in control.
That makes sense. What else?
Well, this next one is really helpful when you're dealing with someone who's particularly skeptical of you or your information. Try to leverage trusted sources.
Okay, what does that mean?
So if you find that someone is resistant to information that's coming directly from you, think about if there are other sources that they already trust and respect.
Right.
Maybe it's a news outlet that they follow, or an expert in a particular field, or even just a respected figure within their community.
Okay.
If you can find a source that they already trust and that source is saying the same thing that you're saying, they might be more likely to listen.
So I'm not changing my message. I'm just changing the messenger.
Exactly. It's all about finding the right messenger for the audience.
Okay. That's interesting. What else?
Well, this next one is all about tacking into the power of story.
Oh, I like stories.
Me too.
Yeah.
And our brains are really wired for stories. You know, data and statistics are important,
Right.
but they often don't connect with us on an emotional level or stick in our memories in the same way that a good story does.
Like an anecdote or something.
Exactly. So if you want to really illustrate a point, instead of just listing a bunch of facts and figures,
Okay.
try sharing a relatable story
Okay.
that will connect with them emotionally.
So instead of me just saying, this is what the data shows,
Yeah.
I'm saying, let me tell you about this person who experienced this.
Exactly. And that story is going to be much more memorable and much more persuasive than just a bunch of data.
Makes sense.
Okay, what
Well,
else?
it's also important to be strategic about your timing.
Oh, yeah. Timing is everything.
It really is. Don't try to have a difficult conversation when someone is already stressed out or emotional or in a hurry.
So not right before dinner when everyone's hungry?
Exactly, or not when they're rushing out the door to go to work.
Okay.
Wait for a calmer, more neutral moment.
Okay.
When you both have the time and space to really engage in a thoughtful conversation.
So choose your moment wisely.
Yeah, pick your battles.
Okay. Good advice.
What else? Well, this next one is all about using visual communication.
Okay. So things like charts and graphs and images,
Right.
these can be really helpful for simplifying complex information and making it more accessible and memorable.
Sometimes it's easier to see something than to just hear about it.
Exactly. And visuals can also be less threatening than a bunch of text or a complicated verbal explanation.
Yeah, it's like, just get to the point.
Yeah, show me what you mean.
Okay, cool. What else?
Well, this one might sound counterintuitive,
Okay.
but try to avoid overwhelming people with too much information at once.
Really?
Yeah, I know it's tempting to just throw all the facts and figures at them.
Right.
But that can actually backfire.
Right.
It can feel like an attack, and it can make them even more resistant to your message.
So don't overload them.
Exactly. Just focus on one or two key points at a time.
Okay.
And give them time to process the information before you move on to the next thing.
So little bites.
Yeah, bite-sized pieces of information.
Got it. Okay, what's the last strategy?
Well, this last one is called the foot in the door technique.
Okay, that sounds interesting. What is that?
So this is a more gradual approach,
Okay.
and it involves starting with small points of agreement.
Okay.
Instead of immediately trying to get someone to completely change their mind,
Uh-huh.
you find some common ground on a related but less controversial topic.
So baby steps.
Exactly. So for example, let's say you're talking to someone who is skeptical about climate change.
Okay.
Instead of immediately launching into a debate about the science,
Mm-hmm.
you might start by asking them if they agree that it's important to protect the environment.
Okay.
And once you've established that initial agreement,
Huh.
you can start to gradually introduce more challenging ideas.
Okay.
And hopefully over time, you can shift their perspective on the bigger issue.
So it's like building a bridge.
Yeah, exactly. You're building a bridge of trust and understanding.
I like that. So after looking at all of this,
Yeah.
what's the most important thing for our listeners to remember?
I think the key takeaway here is that you can't logic someone out of a belief that they didn't logic themselves into.
That's interesting.
When people's beliefs are really deeply rooted in their identity or their emotions, just presenting them with facts and figures often isn't enough.
Right.
In fact, it can sometimes make things worse.
So what should we do instead?
Well, we need to be more thoughtful and understanding.
Okay.
We need to create an environment where people feel safe and respected.
Uh-huh.
And then we can start to gently guide them towards a different perspective.
So to sum it all up, we've been talking about the backfire effect,
We have.
which is this weird thing where our brains sometimes react in the opposite way
Yes.
than we might expect
Uh-huh.
when we're presented with new information.
Right.
We've looked at all the different psychological reasons why this happens,
We have?
and we've talked about some more effective strategies
Yeah.
for communicating with people
Uh-huh.
who have different beliefs than we do.
Is-
So as you go about your day, think about the situations where understanding the backfire effect might be helpful for you,
Yeah.
and try out some of the strategies that we've talked about.
They can really make a difference.
And maybe even more importantly,
Mm-hmm.
think about how you process information
Yeah.
that challenges your own beliefs.
That's so important.
Because we all have biases.
We do.
And we all have these tendencies to dig in our heels
Absolutely.
when we feel like we're being attacked.
We all do it.
So being aware of that
Uh-huh.
can help us to be more open-minded
Right.
and more willing to consider different perspectives.
Exactly. It's all about being open to learning and growing.
So I guess the question for you is,
Yeah.
how can you cultivate that mindset of open-mindedness,
Uh-huh.
even when your own deeply held beliefs are being challenged?
That's a great question.
Yeah, something to think about.
It is.
Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive.
Okay.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and see you next time.